Most people see two shipping containers sitting parallel to each other and think it's a mistake in the site plan. It isn't. It's the most underbuilt family layout in the entire container home world. And once you understand why, you're going to wonder why every container build defaults to a straight box. Here's what nobody tells you about container homes. Almost every design you've seen online is the same shape. One straight run of containers, bolted end to end, or stacked in a simple rectangle. It's the easiest shape to permit and the easiest shape to price out. But easiest isn't the same as smartest, especially if you've got a big family, aging parents, or teenagers who need their own square footage and their own front door, emotionally speaking. Today, I'm breaking down the H-shaped container home. Two container wings facing each other, joined by a connecting module in the middle, two courtyards, three separate living zones, and a floor plan that solves problems a straight container run simply cannot touch. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why builders who specialize in multi-generational container homes are quietly recommending this layout over every other configuration on the market, what it actually costs, and who it's genuinely wrong for. Let's get into it. If you're new here, this is where we break down alternative housing with real numbers, no fluff, and no sales pitch dressed up as advice. Hit subscribe now, because the cost breakdown later in this video is going to change how you think about your build budget. So what is an H-shaped container home? Take two container wings, each built from a run of 40-foot high cube containers stacked or placed side by side, and set them parallel to each other, roughly 18 to 24 feet apart. Connect them in the middle with a shorter crossbar section, usually one or two containers wide, framed conventionally or built from a third container run turned perpendicular. From above, you get a perfect H. From the ground, you get two long, modern volumes facing each other across an open, private space, joined by a shared hub in the middle. That crossbar is where the household actually lives together. Kitchen, dining, the great room. The two wings on either side are where the household lives apart. One wing for one generation or one family unit, the other wing for the next. And because the wings run parallel instead of in a straight line, you get two distinct outdoor spaces instead of one, a front courtyard and a rear courtyard, each doing a different job. This isn't a container-specific invention. Builders working in timber and steel frame construction have used the H-plan for large family homes for decades because it solves a problem straight rectangles never solve well, which is how you separate people without isolating them. Container construction just happens to be an unusually efficient way to build it because you're already working with modular, structurally independent units that were built to be combined. There are 5 specific reasons families are choosing this layout over a standard container run, and reason 3 is the one that changes how most people think about container privacy entirely. Stick around for it. Reason 1. Every single room gets a courtyard view. In a standard straight-run container home, somewhere in the middle of that run, there's a room with no exterior wall to work with, usually a hallway, a bathroom, or a bedroom that ends up feeling like a corridor with a bed in it. Container widths are narrow to begin with, roughly 8 feet internally before insulation eats into that. So a long straight run concentrates the good light at both ends and leaves the middle dark. The H shape eliminates that problem by design. Because the building wraps 2 courtyards instead of running in one direction, every room, including the rooms in the connecting crossbar, faces either the front courtyard, the rear courtyard, or open land. Stand in the kitchen and you can see the front courtyard through one set of container cut window openings and the rear courtyard through the other. No dead middle zone, no windowless bedroom. For a family that's going to be living in this house for 15 or 20 years, that's not a cosmetic detail. That's a daily quality of life difference that shows up every single morning. Reason 2. 3 zones, and you didn't pay for a single extra interior wall to get them. Most container builders try to create privacy inside a straight run using interior partitions, which eats floor space and adds framing cost. The H shape creates 3 genuinely separate zones purely through geometry. The left wing, the right wing, the connecting crossbar. Each wing can have its own entrance off its own courtyard, its own HVAC mini-split zone, its own acoustic separation from the rest of the house, without a single additional stud wall inside a container that wasn't already load-bearing. According to the Pew Research Center, the number of Americans living in multi-generational households has more than quadrupled since 1971, and it now sits at close to 60 million people. That's not a niche living arrangement anymore. That's a structural shift in how this country houses itself. And the H shape is one of the only layouts, container or otherwise, that gives every generation a genuine wing instead of a spare bedroom down the hall. Reason 3, and this is the one I promised you. Most container homes have one outdoor space, if they have one at all, and that single space has to do everything. Entry statement, kids' play area, grilling zone, quiet reading spot. One space carrying every job creates compromises. The H shape gives you 2 courtyards facing opposite directions, which means they catch different light at different times of day, and they get used for completely different things. The front courtyard, the one framed between the 2 wing ends and visible from the driveway, becomes the arrival space. It's semi-public. It's what a delivery driver sees, what a guest walks through before they reach the front door. The rear courtyard, tucked between the wings on the back side of the H, is where the family actually lives outside. 0 road visibility, 0 neighbor sightlines if you've sighted it correctly, and it's the space that opens up to whatever view your land actually has. A fire pit, an outdoor kitchen built into the container's cutout wall, a place for the grandkids to run without anyone worrying about a driveway. You get privacy and openness in the same footprint, something a single straight-run container build genuinely cannot replicate no matter how you orient the windows. Reason 4. The math on cooling works in your favor twice. We've talked before on this channel about how a single courtyard layout can reduce cooling demand meaningfully in warm climates, because the courtyard acts as a shaded microclimate buffer between exterior walls. The H shape doubles that effect. 2 courtyards means 2 buffered zones instead of 1, and because the wings face each other, each wing's exterior wall partially shades the courtyard-facing wall of the other during peak afternoon sun. In a container home specifically, where you're dealing with corrugated steel walls that absorb heat fast without the right insulation package, that self-shading matters. Add operable window openings on both sides of the connecting crossbar, and in the right climate, you can pull a cross breeze straight through the busiest room in the house without the mini split running at all for a good chunk of the year. Reason 5. And it's the reason families stay in this layout for decades instead of outgrowing it in 10 years. It adapts to your family instead of forcing your family to adapt to it. When the kids are young, the whole H functions as one connected home, and the sightlines from the kitchen across both courtyards mean you can watch kids playing outside from almost any room in the crossbar. When those same kids become teenagers who want real independence, each wing becomes its own zone. Their noise, their friends, their schedule stays contained to their wing, and your evenings stay yours. When a parent needs to move in, one wing becomes a genuine in-law unit. Own entrance off the courtyard, own bathroom, own kitchenette if you build it that way. 40 feet across a courtyard instead of down a hallway from your bedroom. And because each wing is built from independent container modules, expanding one wing later, adding a container length if your land allows it, is a straightforward addition rather than a full renovation. Now let's talk about what this actually costs, because I know that's why a lot of you are still here. A standard straight-run container home in 2026 typically lands between $155 and $230 per finished square foot, depending on region, container condition, and finish level. For a family-sized build around 2,200 square feet, that's roughly $341,000 to $506,000 all in. The H shape adds real complexity. You're running 2 independent structural wings, a connecting module with its own roof transitions, and drainage engineering for 2 separate courtyard zones instead of none. Most container builders estimate that premium at 12 to 18% over an equivalent straight-run layout. On that same 2,200 square foot build, an H-shaped container home realistically lands between $385,000 and $590,000. Depending on how far apart you set the wings and how developed you make both courtyards. Here's the honest counterpoint, though. That rear courtyard, fully finished with pavers, an outdoor kitchen module, and a covered connection between the wings, might run you $22,000 to $40,000 to build out completely. The same square footage as an interior room in a container build would cost you $155 to $230 a square foot. On a 400 square foot courtyard, that's the difference between spending $30,000 and spending closer to $80,000 for equivalent square footage. The math tilts in your favor more often than people expect once you actually run the numbers on your land. Now for the honest trade-offs, because this channel doesn't sell you a fantasy. The H-shape needs land, 2 wings, 2 courtyards, and a connecting spine take up considerably more lot width than a straight container run of the same square footage. On a narrow rural parcel or a tight infill lot, this layout may simply not fit, and that's a site question you need to answer before you fall in love with a floor plan. It's also the most structurally involved container configuration on this list. The roof transitions where the crossbar meets each wing, the foundation planning for 2 separate container runs sitting on independent footings, and the drainage design for 2 courtyard zones all add engineering time and costs that a simple rectangular container build doesn't require. And the crossbar itself needs a designer who understands the proportions. Too narrow, and it reads as a hallway instead of a kitchen. Too wide, and you lose the visual connection across both courtyards that makes the whole layout work. This is not a floor plan to pull off a generic container home template. It needs to be designed for your specific containers and your specific site. So who is this actually for? Families expecting to house more than 1 generation under the same roof, long term. Buyers with a lot wide enough to genuinely support 2 parallel wings without cramming the courtyards. And anyone building a container home as a 20-year decision rather than a 5-year starter property, because the H-shape earns its cost premium over time, not on day one. If any of that sounds like your situation, tell me. Drop a comment right now and let me know 2 things. Does your land have the width for something like this? And which of the 5 reasons hit hardest for you? The dual courtyard, the 3-zone privacy, or the way it grows with your family over time? I read every single comment, and I answer the build questions myself. If this opened your eyes to a container layout you hadn't considered before, hit like. It genuinely helps this reach more people trying to build smarter instead of just cheaper. And subscribe if you want the full cost breakdown video on H-shaped container foundations and courtyard drainage, because that's exactly what's coming next. See you in the next one.